Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Fantasy Forecast. Thank you all for tuning in to the first ever episode of the Fantasy Forecast. This channel's primary focus is to help you succeed at fantasy football by analyzing players, teams, coaches, and everything in between. These videos are made for both new and experienced players alike, helping you to get a deeper understanding of the statistical side of football without any of the work. Today, we will be covering Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is a 6-foot, 209-pound wide receiver that was drafted out of Ohio State with the 76th pick of the 2019 NFL Draft. If you shift your focus to the top right of the screen, you can see that he has a very good athletic profile. He is incredibly fast, shown off by his 4.35 40-yard dash. Along with his speed, he posted an impressive 18 reps at 225 pounds on the bench press. Clearly, Terry is an incredible athlete. But how does that translate to the field? If you've watched any of McLaurin's film from the past few years, then you would know that his speed has translated fairly well. What hasn't been captured much as of late, however, is the quickness that you desire from an NFL receiver. That short burst speed has definitely not been one of his strong suits these past few years. Now that we have a good understanding of his athletic profile, let's take a look at his stats from 2023. McLaurin ended the season as the wide receiver 28 in standard PPR scoring. He had 79 receptions for 1,002 yards and 4 touchdowns, posting a solid 12.32 points per game. A solid season, but not one you would really want out of your team's number one wide receiver. He ranked 28th in the league in yards and isn't even in the top 50 for receiving touchdowns. As far as receptions go, he slots in comfortably at 26th. After quickly looking over those stats, you'd be quick to assume that they are not very good for the number one wide receiver on a team that passed the ball more than almost every other team in the league this year. If you made that assumption, you'd be absolutely right. At a glance, his stats last season were pretty mediocre. Let's see if we can uncover anything deeper by looking at some other important statistics. First off, we have yards per route run. As the name implies, the statistic measures the amount of yards you can be expected to gain per route you run. By using this stat in combination with a few other ones, we can get a pretty good idea of his production last year, and it can help us to predict how well a player will do next season. This is my favorite statistic to use when analyzing a receiver's production, and one that you can use yourself quite easily. I like to pair yards per route run with target share to get a good understanding of how involved a receiver is in his team's passing game. Here we can see that McLaurin has a 21.6% target share, which in simple terms just means he is targeted on 21.6% of passes thrown. That number is actually pretty solid, and I think it has a good chance to increase next year, but we'll get more into that in a bit. Moving back to yards per route run, the target you would like to see out of a good NFL receiver is 2.0, which does leave Terry behind the statistical goal. Next up on our list, we look at ADOT, otherwise known as average depth of target. This stat is a very simple one. How far down the field, on average, is the receiver when he is targeted? The farther down the field the receiver is when targeted, the more yards they'll gain from the catch, thus giving you more fantasy points. Typically, for the top NFL players, their ADOT falls somewhere between 8 and 12. The higher the better. Here, we can see that Terry falls at 11.5, which is quite a good ADOT. Finally, the last statistic we have listed is TCR, also known as true catch rate. This statistic measures the catch rate of catchable balls thrown to the receiver. The closer to 100, the better. Here, we see McLaurin has a 92.9% catch rate, which is quite good. Now that we've gone through all the statistics on the screen, we have a pretty good idea of Terry's production this past season, and it was not too good. Now, I know what you're thinking. If all we've seen from these statistics is that McLaurin is playing like an average receiver, then why are you making a video about him? Well, it all comes down to situation. Terry McLaurin has been put in horrible situations throughout his entire career. Not only has the QB play been very poor, it's also been incredibly inconsistent with who is throwing the ball. Terry has had 10 different starting quarterbacks since he joined the league. However, I believe this is all going to change this upcoming draft. The Commanders hold the second pick in this year's NFL draft, and with 2 elite quarterbacks on the board, they're guaranteed to get either Caleb Williams or Drake May. I am very high on both of these players and believe that whatever one goes to Washington will help boost McLaurin's value right away. Typically, you want to be wary of rookie QBs throwing the ball to your receivers, but I think in this situation, it's the best thing that could happen for Terry. He will finally have one set QB throwing him the ball for the next few years, and even if whatever QB ends up in Washington has a rough year, I think they'll end up relying on McLaurin as a true number one wide receiver. Along with the incoming QB change, there has also been a head coaching change in Washington. With Dan Quinn, a defensively minded guy, taking over head coaching duties, a lot of responsibility is pushed onto their new offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, which is a very good thing in my opinion. All signs point to Terry having a great season next year, and with his current price, he is a huge buy for me. So, in conclusion, despite having a rough season this past year, I am very high on Terry McLaurin, especially at his current value. Absolutely buy him if you are competing. And that just about finishes up my first ever YouTube video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you liked the content, and if you have any opinions about the video, please leave them in the comments section below. In my next video, I will be doing a deep dive into trading, how you should value rookie picks and trades, and how you can get good players for cheaper than you would expect. If that sounds interesting to you, be sure to tune in next time on Fantasy Forecast. Thank you all for watching.